I got a new personal record. I made it all the way through a mountain project thread. And it left a bad taste in my mouth. And I want to talk about it. Page 1 and 2 is bantering about my drop tower. No problem. I find it interesting. I want to clarify some things that people brought up, which are valid points. And then I want to talk about page 3 and 4 and how I want to talk about how unhealthy that is for moving us forward as a community and how it stops a lot of people from wanting to explore and do things because, well, they'll get trolled. So let's bring up Mountain Project, shall we? So the original post was the climbing carabiners don't break like you think. Trediban posted that he liked the video, but then he uses a 12mm static rope for the test. Question mark. Valid question. And then the discussion starts. And I think Big Red actually nailed it. Easiest way to generate high loads to break everything. They're not testing the rope, they're testing the break strength of the carabiner, trying to break them. They should probably use steel cable. Well, steel cable scares me. If it goes flying or breaks, it kind of like is not good. That's why AmSteel is pretty nice. It doesn't have that recoil. I did use a static rope, and then it broke the rope or it broke the carabiners. And I want people to understand, I didn't post the drop tower videos. I didn't use it. I didn't try to use it until it was like perfect. I got procrastinating perfectionism on that tower because I knew I'd get trolled. You know what? I got enough people going, where's the videos for the drop tower? Now, I was super busy this year and it's not done. I actually want to keep doing stuff, but I was able to do some simpler tests like the carabiner video. And, you know, I can't care what people think. It's not done. If you have not watched How Not To, this is a journey, not a destination. I'm just exploring how to do stuff. My SlackSnap videos, you gotta admit, are so much better than when they were years ago because I know how to use the machine. This is my first time using the drop tower. It's a very different animal dropping things. And I'm learning that it's kind of hard to break stuff. I have to either use heavier weights or more static items. And as people mentioned in here, I am trying to isolate the problem to be the carabiners. And it was pretty hard to break a carabiner that's sharing a hanger with something else. So let's just go down this a little bit more and we'll rant. Timothy Fisher said, clearly they missed something with their setup, as some suggested the quick link could move in the test. A lot of people brought that up, and I'll talk about that in a second. I pointed out that in a real fall, the rope rubbing through the bottom beaner in the top piece could cause vibration. I think the test would be more meaningful with a dynamic rope tied off at the ground and a quick link against a flat surface. So my master point was here, and the quick link could move. Now the diameter of the quick link at the top was the same whether it's here or here. It wasn't pushing against it no matter where I put it. I experimented with multiple hangers and multiple options before I actually started filming. There's a lot of thought that goes into the video before I push record, but eventually I just have to push record. I could repeat these tests. And the video that I based all this on of the climber falling and his carabiner breaking quite low and then him falling to the next piece, I think his gate opened. I think whatever it was sharing with opened the gate, not sandwiched it in and leveraged it wrong. But until you post a video, edit it, think about it, and have a lot of thoughts put into it, can we reverse engineer it? At first I thought he was sort of wacky, but I'm enjoying his recent vids. I'm not everybody's flavor. That's okay. If you like the content, rad. If you don't, that's fine. Timothy said, also, I just noticed the size of the quick link and the test was 3/8 or larger. Most bail links are 5/16. Well, exactly. The carabiner didn't even register that it was sharing anything in there, and I was trying to get it like the way I've seen it before, where it's just like sandwiched in there. So that's why it took 3 carabiners to actually get what I was looking for. Small quick links weren't going to do anything, which was going to be pretty boring in the video. Timothy also brought up, actually, I think most of their testing is the opposite of fear-mongering. Yep, super good enough. Their titles are often clickbait. Not really. When I make a title, it is what's in the video. But results show that stuff doesn't make me concerned about gear. In this case, they were trying to reproduce a failure that happened in a normal fall. They were not successful. That is the most interesting part of the video. I think that's great. I think all of this discussion is valid, healthy, and I'm fine if somebody doesn't like my video. We'll get to page 3 and 4 in a little bit. So Tredaban, who posted this originally, brought up the static rope again. That's not normal. The results mean nothing unless it's a realistic test. Maybe a dynamic rope could make conditions worse somehow? We don't know. So why not try it? Because that would be boring, eh? No, because it's actually quite complicated to incorporate certain things. Now, the other video we posted where we had like quick draws made out of paracord, and those blue, we had dynamic rope going up and down. I felt like that was more relevant. I was just trying to generate the highest force I can and shock load it in this case. Now, I could repeat the test, but I don't think the results mean nothing if it's not realistic. None of the numbers on your carabiners were ever made in a realistic scenario. They're made in a sterile lab. And I do now, unfortunately, have some sort of a lab. But I'm also going to go outside when I learn how to break, not my line scales, but the stuff I'm trying to break, and go back out to real cliffs, real rock, and keep tinkering between the lab and real life. And that's the process. But it's not useless. Big Red mentioned that there's also a good chance that they don't have enough height on the drop tower to use a dynamic rope. See how high above the anchor they need to lift the weights, even with static line, only to generate under 20 kilonewtons. I wonder even if their sample rate, if they're missing peak forces. I have a 10,000 hertz load cell in the SlackSnap machine in order to test that on the drop tower. Now, in order to hook that up on the drop tower requires longer cables, which change my numbers, and I have to make sure everything flows and works and connects to a computer in January and not get moisture on the computer. So there will be tests on whether or not I need faster hertz than the 1280 that the Line Scale 3 was designed to capture. Most of the things we're going to test outside, especially human testing, doesn't need more than 1280 hertz, or your body's going to break. So even on the Dan Osman forces, the videos that's going to be out on that, I actually have the peak forces. You can see on the graph, if you zoom in on the, I think 640 and 1280 hertz that we had, that the peak force lasted for 5 points. And you can kind of see how the graph goes up and down. And we can talk about hertz and how fast it is. Richard Delaney said that he uses a 2500 hertz for, I believe, steel cables. So like very static things. So I'm assuming static ropes, things that do stretch, are super good enough at 1280 hertz. We will explore that. But either way, I wanted to see if a carabiner was going to break at 2 or 3 kilonewtons. I was expecting that. Didn't expect to have to drop huge weights with static stuff to make this happen. Anyways, Cole Forsmark made a comment about my biggest disappointment in testing this setup on a single hanger design. I'm sure a smaller, bigger, different hanger would lever a beaner over a quick link much harder. I owned almost every hanger that exists. I tried them all, and I found ClimbTech was like the smallest opening that made sense to use. And I mean, we spent an hour setting this thing up, and like, I can't get the carabiner bobby to like behave poorly. So I went with ClimbTech, and it started to deform, and it was such an open hole at that point that I just was like, screw this, I'll go with the fixed hanger, the ones I normally see in the climbing areas I go to the most. So I did put a lot of thought into the right hanger in order to try to create this. I think the guy just had his beaner open because it was sharing the thing. But it wasn't because it was levering against his quick link. I just do not see that being the problem. Enter into the scene Jim Tett from boltproducts.com. I appreciate the research he's done. I have some of his information in the Bolting Bible, which I found quite useful. I like his bolts. It's one of Bobby's favorite bolts. That being said, there are some things I did not like in this thread, and we're going to bring them up today. It's reinvent the wheel time again. Thanks, Jim. The relationship between solid weight and human body for standard testing is well established. Really? Where's the link? For shorter falls and static rope, it is well-researched industrial safety applications, and the real reason carabiners aren't drop tested, and the difference if you do drop test them, are well known and understood. Really? Let me rant real quick. I can put the phone away for this one. The numbers printed on the carabiners and the UIAA falls, or if you're lucky, the breaking strength of a rope that's printed on a rope product when you get it, is utterly worthless You have to pull it, doing this, and doing this in order to get the damn number. And if I don't get that number and I say that, oh, we're not getting those numbers, oh, you didn't test it right. But I'm not doing realistic science. I think real science is the most useless thing in climbing because it's so sterile. I, in my backyard science, am not reinventing the wheel. I'm throwing variables into this on purpose. And I think that's so important to understand holistically what's going on. You know what I took away from that video? Not to cross-load steel beaners. I thought steel beaners were bomber. They don't have a cross-loaded rating on here. Well, now we know it's 17. They broke before a jacked up normal aluminum carabiner stacked on top of a bunch of other stuff. Eye-opening. I learned so much from what I'm doing, and we'll talk about distribution. Spoiler alert, Jim brings up that I do this for the clicks. Yep, because the clicks isn't so I get an extra 30 cents in YouTube ads. You realize if I put 80 hours a week into something else, I could be making money. This is because I'm so excited to share with people who don't read these scientific journals that I tried to read the ones that were linked in this mountain project forum, and they're so boring. And I like the topic, but there's so many people out there that use this gear that don't understand it, that would watch an 8-minute YouTube video, and they're gonna learn something from it. I don't say that you should stack carabiners, but my God, how many of us have done that and are like, ugh, that doesn't look like a good idea. If you measure how much force a tree falls in a forest, but you don't publish it, did you do a science paper? If no one reads this stuff, or it doesn't show up on page 1, 2, or 3 of Google, does it help? Wet ropes. I'm gonna be working, when you see this, I'm going to the lab, I'm gonna be brake testing wet ropes. I have researched it. I actually, believe it or not, tried to do homework before I brake test wet ropes. And I can't find anything. They stretch less. That's what I find. I even found research about that, like 30% less, 50% less, it depends what it is. But does it break lower? The day I'm researching this, somebody messages me and says, oh, my friend is using a climbing rope in a canyon. Isn't that dangerous when the rope gets wet? People don't know. They all think that wet ropes break lower. In the research I found, people kind of skirt around it, but no, it's not on page 1, 2, or 3 of Google. I can't find it. So as soon as I break it and I publish it and spend 20 hours editing it so it's interesting, and I'm gonna spend 4 to 5 hours testing it because I'm gonna be super thorough how much it shrank and how much the dynamic load is. It's gonna be pretty awesome. But after I publish that, all in the comments, there's gonna be all these published papers that I should have known about. They're not available. Jim, I researched your website. I put it all in the Bolting Bible. And I don't know where this other stuff is. I would love to have researched it. And instead of, and this is the part that bothers me, is if people know more than me, and I'm getting the clickbait and the eyeballs, share with me this information. We can post these descriptions I'm writing that are a little bit more thorough under the videos as a blog on the website, linked to these other things that are more scientific for those who want that. I want to give that to people who want that. It's not me. I'm not going to go isolate things and break stuff for a week and spend $10,000 on this research for this one little item. No, you're going to get backyard science from me. That's what you're getting. So, but man, if you have that research, I would love to have it. Anybody else on page 3 and 4 of this forum has research they want to share, tell me about it. I'll share it. Even if it's after I publish it, I'll share it. But I don't appreciate when people tell me I'm not doing things right and have some hidden article that someone was supposed to know about. I'm not going to go to engineering school. We all know college is expensive. There's a lot of people that went to engineering school. What I want to do is explore the things that I wondered and was afraid of when I was climbing. And I want to go test it in any situation I want. And I'm limited with Slack Snap and the drop tower. And when I'm done finessing and making sure I know how these line scale 3s work and I'm not screwing up my graphs, and I know it's fast enough and I know how to not break them, then I'll go out and do more science. I'm not slowing down. I'm doing this for years more. The tests get better. The drop test, it was my first drop test video. And this is why I didn't post anything for a while, because I was like, oh, the trolls. And people kind of got off my balls on the SlackSnap machine because it's a little better, or I stop saying it's science. I don't know. Maybe people are just used to it. But the drop tower pops up and oh my God, people get all over that stuff. There are people I know that were putting out some amazing tutorials that stopped because of trolls. There's a lot of people that would explore this stuff, but they see the trolls just eat those people alive. Trolls, or not being supportive, you don't have to like all my material, but not being supportive of what people are doing in this small community, it stagnates progress. It stagnates exploration. And thank God I don't care enough to stop. Of course it bothers me, I'm human. But I just want you to know, this is why I can't respond to all the comments in YouTube. They're so toxic usually. Now, you gotta understand, 90% of the people like it, and I love the kudos, it's great. But it's not why I avoid the comments. I don't need my back patted all the time. I get a lot of ideas on what to do next, how to do things better, and guess what? I'm doing them better now. But man, I just like, when I read page 3 and 4 of this forum, it just makes me want to work harder, because I feel like I'm the only one putting out content out there that doesn't have a dick measuring contest associated with it. It's like, this is my stuff. I air out my dirty laundry. And you know what I've learned about science experiments? Even like legitimate ones? They're polished. I'm not saying they're polished before they break. They're polished after they break. And it's like, no one can get as clean of data as we think they're getting in labs. Man, when I start scratching at the surface of how'd you get that number? How'd you do that? I can't seem to repeat that. How'd you do that? Oh my God, you find out there's a whole gap of like, not excuses aren't the right words. God knows I've got excuses. Reasons why they couldn't do it better or produce a different result. Jim, I've broken more of your bolts under the stated MBS than anybody else's bolts. You explained after the fact. You explained why. That if you don't pull them at the same rate or the same way, or you pull them 8 times, because like cyclically loaded or a bolt is used multiple times, then it breaks higher because of work hardening. Cool. But man, if I pull a monster bolt straight up, it breaks at 20 kilonewtons.
Oh, that's it. That's it. Hey, it was weaker than the first one, 20.4.
Now you know the standards. You're testing as good as you can for standards. There's not even that many standards for bolts. This is a little more cowboy than people realize. And what I do appreciate is that you are testing your stuff. Wave bolts pulled on their bolt with a freaking tractor, like it didn't break, and they literally, that's what they posted. Now, it is strong, definitely strong enough, and it'll super deform before it kills anybody, but it's still, it's a lot more cowboy than people are leading on, and there's a nice printed number on the stuff you're installing, or at least on the website if it's a glue-in. Bolts are not that way. I just don't want this scientific community telling me I'm not doing things right when I'm constantly poking holes in them. I understand we need to brake test ropes with a diverter and have 6x, 3x, 10x the radius so it like breaks full strength and you can extrapolate from there and compare to another rope. But God damn it, I tie a figure 8 in it. I want to know what it breaks at a figure 8. Oh, but there's so much variation. Then break 100 of them, average it out. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just tinkering and I make it interesting. Back to this for a minute. Tredaban wrote, the industry ratings are only good for comparisons. That beaner is stronger than that beaner. They aren't helpful in determining best practices. Ryan et al. Is at least striving for more informative testing. Nailed it. It's exactly what I feel like I'm doing. And then Jim says, maybe in your fantasy world, but the rest of the climbing population seem to find the standards useful, if not essential. I don't agree. You can always set up a company selling unrated climbing ropes made in China and test your theory. I do find quality control being essential, but a specific number that it breaks at just put super good enough on the carabiner. It is. And have it certified, have it tested by standards, but don't put the number, because even those standards are behind a effing paywall. So it's like, and even if I bought them paywall, I couldn't even share it with my audience, the audience that uses this gear, to trust their life to it. So screw the number. I love quality control. Jim Tick continues. Ryan's testing is good. He's younger, almost 40, but thank you. More enthusiastic, willing to put his time and money where his mouth is. Thank you. And I'm learning. If nothing else, his test can lead to debates where normal climbers get an idea of why it isn't simple, why real-world testing is usually a waste of time, and why a certain amount of thought and knowledge is required to design effective tests. Reading dual technical papers is regrettably the only way to provide normal climbers with reliable information. He doesn't pretend to be scientific, he's producing entertainment for tubers. I don't agree that reading dull scientific papers is the only way to learn stuff. Clearly. For example, Ryan mentions he's going to drop test carabiners. One assumes to see if the strength rating derived from pull test is accurate. So he'll bust a few, make a 15-minute video which raises more questions than it answers, and everyone is happy since they saw real-world testing. But nothing will change in the real world. That this was done in the early 70s when standards were established is irrelevant. That this was extensively and extremely accurately studied, the usual 2-year postgraduate engineer student thing. And that derived from their recommendations, retesting, I was paid a 4-figure sum to work out why this occurred won't affect his YouTube clicks, or his income, or the subsequent debate mountain project's click count either. It won't change good climbing practice or carabiner design either. It's just gear porn videos instead of real sex. Google real sex. Go watch it. Film yourself and watch it. It's awful. Sorry, I was just looking for the link to that study. Do you know why I'm gonna bust a few beaners on the drop tower to see if they're the same as the slow pull machine? Because of all the comments. Because no one knows. Extensively studied 15 years before I was born. That doesn't help anybody. And it would be nice to know what that is so I can include it, maybe even look at it, and demonstrate how variables play effectiveness. Because when I'm climbing, for some reason, there's variables everywhere. Because the scenarios are different on every situation. I'd like to know what things are doing in real life. And I'm sure that 2-year engineering PhD crap was so isolated that I don't think I would be able to take that study and apply it to what I actually do in the mountains, which is usually everything wrong. I'd like to know how dangerous the stuff is that I'm getting creative with when I have nothing else to use. Or if people are going to use things right, it would be nice to know. But gear porn, man, that would make a good shirt. Thank you for that suggestion. Soft crux. What's a soft crux? Interesting name. He said, Ryan isn't scientifically rigorous. True, I'm not. I totally admit I'm not. But his projects might still teach us something useful. Yeah, the exact science of industry testing is no longer interesting. Never was interesting. It's just routine and mundane QA process. Yep. We already know that gear is plenty strong enough unless we use it in a way that hasn't been tested, which apparently is the way I find. I broke, a web lock is what holds webbing for highliners. I broke one of those and it was like the strongest web lock in the world. And I broke it like super low. And they were asking me, how the hell did you break that so low? It's amazing what I find when I don't research something first, by the way. I find not having an engineering degree is quite helpful. So Jim Titt said, we, Ryan, Bobby, and I, know what each of us do and mutually respect this. I do, totally do. We aren't in some grade school willy-nilly waving competition. We communicate privately and do our own thing. Ryan is a publicist, I'm an engineer. He gets kicks from clicks, I don't. Internet discussion is simply entertainment. Nothing much really happens on it of importance in the real world. Tredaban is merely trolling when he says Ryan is threatening my income. He knows nothing whatsoever about me or my assets or my earnings. Could you imagine if a publicist and an engineer worked together? How much you would learn? If I could take really smart people's thorough studies and actually make them very interesting as I study YouTube psychology, that would, I think, help this channel a lot. And I think the call to action to all of this is, let's work together. I'm not interested in having weird forum debates about my channel as being anything useful. No one's going to learn anything from that. Putting stuff in the comments helps. People can go through and read if there's a consensus of what either I did wrong or studies that have already been done. I actually learn a lot from comments, just like most of you do. But if you actually have really good information, I collaborate with a lot of people. I work really hard on this channel and I want it to be the best I can. I try to film it better, I try to edit it better, and I try to get my science better. And I would really like to have everyone's help. I'm just picking on Jim here just because he kind of got sucked into the trolls and kind of gave in to them. So I ask that everybody who's smarter than me, which is surprisingly a lot of my audience, gets off my backyard science nuts and helps me make this channel better. Thanks for watching. I'm sure you're going to share this. Cheers.